Well, I don't know who killed Nisman, so I am sorry. But I actually know that Nisman's death has suddenly brought the world attention to this is a fact. And the case is simple. It includes 5 Cold War intelligence agencies: Israel, Syria, Iran, oil politics, and of course the CIA and the Mossad. So the case is simple. A few days ago, Paloma wrote on Facebook, the more I read, the less I know.
Doesn't make it sound smart. But...
No, I want to say that this is, generally this is the case. The truth, this is the case. But in this case, you are not the only one. Because there are so many ways to describe the impact of what happened and to analyze political, especially political and social significance of the case. So I have to admit that for me it was a very difficult task to prepare this talk, because if you open the press you get confused. So I decided to put the event in a historical context and to present the facts in a chronological way in order to, with the hope, to open here a round table and a debate. So I wrote a short text just to put it in, as I said, in an historical context and to debate the terrorist attack on the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires in 1992 and the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in 1994, AMIA, 2 of the worst terrorist attacks worldwide during the 1990s, brought the Islamic fundamentalist terrorism phenomenon to Argentina. The majority of Argentine civil society perceive and explain the attack on the embassy as a transnational effect of the Middle East conflict, and as a result of Argentina's foreign policy during the Gulf War. Hezbollah, the armed branch of Islamic Jihad, claimed responsibility for the bombing, but the Argentine Supreme Court of Justice, in charge of the investigation of the act against the embassy, overlooked this fact and constructed several hypotheses. One of them was, for example, the internal explosion. Another one was the fact that radical Jews from the right tried to stop the peace process, for example. Similar misleading mechanism functioned in the case of the attack on the AMIA, the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires. Immediately after the event, the CIA office in Buenos Aires asserted that Syrian authorities might have been behind this terrorist attack, together with Iran. But soon enough, US agencies began to divert attention from Syria, focusing exclusively on Iran. According to some analysts, this was due to the American and Israeli perception that Syria would co-opt it for the peace process. On the other hand, following the Syrian lead would have been embarrassing to the Menem administration that have developed good relations with Hafez al-Assad, who had provided financial sources and helped him fund his electoral campaign. So not following the Syrian lead, all the way, was congenial to all parties concerned with the investigation, except to the victim's family. This is the context in which memoria activa, active memory, was created. Non-governmental organization that the relatives of the victims established. Due to the accusations against the misleading course of both attacks, investigations, the Argentine Congress created in July 1996 the bicameral commission for the continuation of the investigations of the attacks against the Israeli embassy and AMIA. One of the first reports of this bicameral commission, and I quote, wrote the following things: "The work of the Supreme Court of Justice of the nation in its first stage was not what had been expected by any Argentine, and left open the possibility of the second terrorist attack in 1994. The Special Bicameral Commission provided important information on the local connections for both attacks. According to this information, police officers and carapintadas had helped to create the structure that provided the logistical support for the terrorists, but for some reason, this lead did not prosper. In July 1999, Memoria Activa accused the Argentine government before the Inter-American Committee of Human Rights of the Organization of American States for its non-investigation of the attack. In September 2001, the trial of 20 individuals accused of providing logistical support for the terrorists finally began, and the Organization of American States Committee validated Memoria Activa's charges by appointing Claudio Grossman, president of the former, as observer to the trial. The trial concluded in 2004 without any conclusion. In 2005, the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights declared that Argentina failed to provide justice in the AMIA case. In this context, Nestor Kirchner, Argentina's president at the time, recognized the state's responsibility for failing to prevent the bombing or solve the crime, and assigned Alberto Nisman to be the federal special prosecutor of the case. Since then, Nisman had spent almost a decade investigating the worst terrorist attack in Argentina's history. In 2006, Nisman formally accused Iran and Hezbollah of bearing responsibility for the bombing, and in 2007, the Interpol has issued arrest warrants for 6 Iranians suspected of involvement. According to Nisman, Nestor Kirchner refused to negotiate with Iran and rejected an eventual deal to purchase Argentina wheat for $4 billion if Argentina ended its prosecutorial efforts against Iranian suspects. Yet, after President Kirchner's death in 2010, Nisman described an abrupt policy shift under the leadership of his wife, President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. He argued that President Kirchner chose to essentially indemnify Iran in the investigation, directing her Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hector Timerman, Jewish origin, to remove Iran from the AMIA case and even pursue false local connections. All to improve trade relations between Iran and Argentina. Nisman confirmed he has verified phone records supporting his claims against the president, Her Minister Timmerman, and other government functionaries. The political shift to improve relations with Iran also explains, according to Nisman, of course, the controversial 2013 Memorandum of Understanding between Argentina and Iran, intended to establish a joint truth commission to investigate the AMIA bombing. Many people doubted the possibility that such a commission would lead to any truth, and felt it would instead ensure that justice would not be obtained. According to Nisman, its purpose was political, to help with Argentina's negotiations with Iran. Nisman intended to present the evidence he discovered before Congress, yet he was found dead the night before in his apartment. According to preliminary autopsy results, it was a suicide. However, the timing of Nisman's death has left many Argentines questioning whether this was in fact a suicide or a political matter. In the context of Argentine political culture, with its long experience of impunity for crimes committed by the powerful, the circumstances of his death have led to a general conviction that the government must have been behind his murder. And of course, it brought ghosts from the past, the dictatorship. Yet, the AMIA case and the death of Nisman exposed the flaws in Argentina's justice system and its promiscuous relationship with the intelligence establishment, raising profound questions about democracy and the rule of law in Argentina. 10 years after his appointment as special prosecutor, and 20 years, almost 21 actually, years after the bombing, little has changed in the landscape of justice in Argentina. So Nisman's death is another cloud over the AMIA bombing investigation. How and why did Alberto Nisman die? Who was responsible for the AMIA bombing? When will Argentines see some form of justice in these cases? All these questions remain open questions, challenging the limit of democracy in Argentina. So I hope with these questions we can open a debate.
Because there are so many questions, I'm hoping that both of you will have a chance to expound before we open it up to questions.
Okay.
So thank you, Katie and Idea.
I don't have anything to say or to add to.
You don't know who killed me?
I know that was the same thing I'm not going to say. And but let me try to place the historical record that Sevi set up into the current context in Argentina. And I would say that the first thing that we need to understand, and everybody who is from Argentina, who reads about Argentina, knows that currently we are living in a very, very deeply polarized society. And we cannot understand everything that is published and said about Nisman's death without taking into account that. Some of you probably read that on Sunday, Clarín published an article on the need for international judges in the investigation of Nisman. They interviewed me, and now several of my friends don't talk to me because I spoke to Clarín. And that is how people are living in Argentina. In the morning I have to read Página 12 and Clarín just to get a full picture of what is happening in my country. Because that, and even with that, I have a less sense of what is going on, but that reflects how divided the society is, and how everybody tried to explain what happened with Nisman death based on that division. The other thing that is very, very important to understand that is that a huge portion of the Argentine society mistrusts the state, and particularly mistrusts the justice, the judicial system. So it's not like in other countries where if a judge rules something, everybody will say, okay, that was the result of a fair process, and we accept the facts. That is something that we need to take into account, and it's not only a mistrust of the judiciary, but also of the executive power, and I would say that the mistrust of the executive power is even bigger. The third element to think about is that in this mistrust and polarized society, there is a clear confrontation between an important sector of the judiciary and the government. And within the judiciary, there is also an ongoing ideological confrontation between two sectors that express different understanding of what's the role of judges in a democratic society. But part of the discourse is that from the government, that because the opposition doesn't have enough political force to limit the power of the government, they are using the judges. And some judges are playing the role of the opposition. And they see that part of both the investigation and the use of Nisman death, and particularly the march last week convened by a group of prosecutors, is part of this campaign from the judiciary against the government. And as Sevi mentioned, all these play in a context where the intelligence services in Argentina did not go through a transformation upon the return to democracy in 1983. So for almost 30 years, nobody really tried to reform or change the operation of intelligence service, with one huge problem. After the military dictatorship, the armed forces were prohibited from doing domestic intelligence. And all that power was transferred to SEAL, to the Secretary of Intelligence. And that is where everybody pointed as part of the problem behind the Nisman investigation. And only in December of last year, after almost 30 years of democracy, after almost 12 years of the Kirchner family government in Argentina, there was a first attempt to change the operation of the intelligence services committed to do. The fourth element, or the fifth element, is that we need to read everything in terms of the anti-Semitism that is present in Argentine society. And that goes across the board. From the bombing and understanding the AMIA bombing, when people went out and say there were Jewish persons who died and also innocent victims. And from that, there was something that was even published in some of the Argentine newspapers in 1994 to many of the undertones that goes on today, and if you read the newspaper, you can notice that. And the final point that is important is that also there is a divided Jewish community. And you can see, and for me, one of the things that is really, really interesting is that the first time that the internal divisions of the Jewish community are being played in public. And the newspapers are reporting about these different approaches. And of course, depending who publishes is the vision that they have and how they can use either to support or to oppose the government. But that is a new development that it's very, very unusual to discuss Jewish politics in public in Argentina, and I see this happening today. So with these elements
I
that
see this in the creation of new organizations, like Memoria Activa.
and that Memoria Activa also reflects another division, and it's the division between the relative or the survivors of the bombing. And there is no a single voice that can talk or speak on behalf of the victims of AMIA. Memoria Activa is just one group, but there is another group represented by the official authorities of the Jewish community, and there are different visions there on what is happening with the AMIA investigation, what is happening with the charges that prosecutor Nisman filed. So we need to understand that also as an important element. So, as you saw, we don't have any answers. We, as you, have a lot of questions, and I think that it would be really good to have a frank conversation with you about these issues that, for me, will define how the Argentine democratic society is able to handle these very, very difficult matters in the context of a presidential campaign. So what's the first thing that you would do as a lawyer? First, be sure that the evidence that you have is really, really strong. That's the first thing. And let's assume that he had all the tapes of all these phone calls going back and forth. Let's give him credit for that. The next thing that you do is you say, well, this is the evidence that I have. These are the crimes that I'm accusing, and these are all the legal presence and the legal theory of my case. That legal presence and legal theory is missing in 300 pages. There's nothing. So you don't accuse a president of a country, and in 1 or 2 pages, you make your legal case. Unless you are, I don't know, a genius. This man was really good, but he wasn't a genius. So the accusation, in my reading, is quite weak. But there is an important element. There was a new prosecutor appointed to follow up his accusation, and that new prosecutor refiled, I don't remember, Policita. So he refiled, and he confirmed the accusation of Nisman with a little less.
To open the Secret Service's files, and not because he has a case.
Yes, and one thing that it tells that he doesn't believe so far that there is a case is that Nisman wanted the president to testify in the criminal investigation. The new prosecutor did not ask for the president to testify in the investigation. That, for lawyers, means that you are not so sure about the evidence that you have, and you are not ready to call the president to come and testify in the criminal investigation. My sense is that this new prosecutor is gaining time, and so reopening not to absorb all the blame of closing the investigation that Nisman started, and probably in a couple of months will say, I don't have anything, let's close down the investigation. That's my sense, but I'm trying to guess the future. That's it? Everybody's clear?
Well, perhaps getting away a little from the legalistic and technical side and more to the Jewish community side. Something we've talked about a bit is something that's happening in the Jewish community, this whole issue of who speaks for whom, and Jews who do not want to feel that they're being spoken for by AMIA or Daya. Could you say a little bit about that?
Well, Daya is seen like, this is interesting. I read last week in Página 12 that the sociologist called Alberto Toer. He's organized Jews, not from Daya, not from AMIA. Jews in Argentina, apparently, they are it's the political division in the Argentine society. You can see the same division within the Jewish community. And apparently Daya is in the government line, in the official line. Yes, we can see the same divisions. AMIA, Daya, and Memoria Activa. The interesting thing that I read last week also was that some Jews are planning to set up a commission very similar to the CONIDEP, and they are using Memoria and Justicia in the same way that they use with the desaparecidos in Argentina, to investigate the case and to open the files of the secret services. But yes, the case is generating interdivisions also in the Jewish community. And Jews in Argentina don't see Daya as they represent many Jews today. I try to invite someone from Daya to participate here in a Skype call, but they were very excited to do it, but at the last minute they canceled. So,
Well, I'd just like to mention, you can't overestimate how divisive this issue has been. I'm the manager of the listserv for the Latin American Jewish Studies Association. That Nisman actually had to become a forbidden topic on the list because no one would be left speaking to one another. So.
Yeah, the case of Natasha is a representative case.
Oh, this was a big polemic that broke out. There surely must be other questions. Yes.
Well, more comment than good therapy. I mean, I find all this very frustrating. I'm Daniel Friedman, I'm professor in LLILAS and sociology, and as a social scientist, I like hard evidence and things that I can at least trust. And you know, essentially the role of intelligence services, both from Argentina and other countries, and you mentioned them at the beginning, makes all these, you know, the cloud, as you mentioned, is there all the time, and I'm not sure we're going to know. We know so little about how the services operate between themselves, their relations with the government, their relations with the judiciary system, and their relations with journalists. You know, even the information we see, we're not sure, you know, how much of that, if not everything, was fed by intelligence officials, and how much of that is true or not. So, on top of the polarization and different interests of newspapers and you know, and the government and so on, you have an actor about which we know nothing, playing their own game. And so, you know, I have the feeling that only people who are insiders can know something about, even, I'm not saying who killed Nisman, but just the way they operate, the general understanding of how these things happen, and even knowing this is obviously an intelligence operation that you're seeing here, and this is obviously not, or this is true, or this, you know, what can you trust? And on top of that, I mean, I think none of us know that, but on top of that, there's the element of foreign policy, which I personally, not an expert, and you know, I think one needs a good understanding of the logic of foreign policy and what the memorandum was about, what it was trying to achieve. why it failed, why different actors opposed to it, what was Iran trying to get from that, and what's going to happen to Argentina's foreign policy because of this event and Argentina's image. So, sort of to summarize that, one of my friends from Australia on Facebook posted, oh, the Argentine president was indicted. And I was like, this whole story reads like a spy story, in part because it is a spy story. And a lot of people in other countries, all they're seeing is, wow, the president was indicted. And obviously, I don't think you can account for the consequences of things with the intentions, but what is that relationship between intention and consequences of different obscure actors? And just to give one, factual example, you have someone like journalist Jorge Lanata, which is sort of the representative of one of the media groups in Argentina, saying today, speaking in favor of Nisman as the person who was bringing the truth to this story and indicting the president and so on, and recording on radio from 2 years ago saying, we all know that Nisman is the guy that's keeping us from the truth, and he's making things up, and that his wife's court is essentially a branch from the intelligence service. So he said that 2 years ago, and he's just ignoring that. And so, I'm not singling out this journalist in particular, but rather how, well, yeah, I am. I am. But what I'm saying is, what does that tell us about what people are saying that they know and what things they are not saying for reasons that are, everyone's speaking about the truth, but how much they really want to help us figure that out.
Well, two comments that I think are related to each other is, one is about the possibility of having an international commission act on it, and that's, I think, a double-edged sword too, because you're also going to have the people thinking that this should be it's an internal affair, and it's very paternalistic to have someone from outside come solve our own problems. At the same time, you have a division of power that is being seen as a threat by the government. So you have Cristina Fernández de Kirchner calling the prosecutors that went to the march the judicial party. So how do you reconcile those two things? I don't have an answer either.
We have a question there in the back.
Can I make it in Spanish? Is that possible?
Sure. Sally will translate.
Mi pregunta es, ¿qué herramientas tiene hasta el día de hoy el derecho, la abogacía, que no tenemos los ciudadanos de a pie, el público en general, para no quedar atrapados en la guerra entre Clarín y el gobierno a la hora de formar una opinión sobre el caso, ¿no? O la primera pregunta sería, en realidad, antes de eso, ¿cómo afecta esta guerra desatada entre el gobierno y el multimedio a la hora de tener la verdad, ¿no? De conocer la verdad. Para Ariel.
You want to translate? So basically, translation? Yeah.
So
Vero?
The
question is, how does the common citizen that does not have the tools that the government has avoid getting trapped in the narrative between the media and the government?
Mm-hmm.
How can you form an opinion if you're trapped between?
If all your information is coming from either the media or the government,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Just
That is not.
read as much as you can from all the different sides and then form your own opinion. And be skeptical about everything. Including your own
It
ideas.
seems like everybody is very emotional about this.
Yeah.
It seems like
Yeah.
you can really form an opinion because everybody puts their emotions into this. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a message where you originally are going to decide, we kind of go by that. And maybe that's where we're going.
So we have two, and then Danny will respond.
Well, I have two questions that kind of connects to some of the comments. Number one is how do, so there's so much distrust of what comes out from the political level, from the judicial level. So a question is more, what mechanisms or what could happen to help lower that level of distrust? Because you're talking about terrible terror attacks that happened over 20 years ago and something that's very deep-seated. So if you have any comments about that. And the other question is more to Sebi. Has that had any impact on immigration to Israel, from Argentina to Israel?
No, it was
One journalist.
one journalist. But no, definitely.
Well, more the idea of the terror attacks, anti-Semitism, the distrust that has
Anti-Semitism and terrorism have never affected immigration rates in Israel, and economic distress and economic hardship goes out on the truth. But the answer is no. And the first question.
The first one was
was.
what to do.
Is there a way to, in terms of distrust, is there something that you being well acquainted with the culture and people in Argentina, something that could be done to help lower levels of distrust?
But let me tell you, I think that for instance, I expected that the president would say, express her condolences to the family of Nisman, to say, I fully disagree and completely disagree with everything that he said and all the accusations that are baseless, and I'm ready to appear in front of the judge to demonstrate that. But this is really, really a crucial moment in the Argentine history. We need to let the judicial system to function, and we need to accept the results of that. And I'm, as the president of the country, put at the full at the disposal of the prosecutor and the judge all the elements of the state to clarify what happened with this. That's what I would have expected. And from the opposition, I would expect, among other things, to say, yes, we've been saying that the intelligence services in Argentina are highly problematic. We were calling for reforms of that, and we are ready to sit and talk with the government. When the government presented a proposal to transform the intelligence services, the opposition walked away. So I think that there is a lack of leadership on both sides of the political spectrum in Argentina, and that's what we need, especially now that we are in the middle of a presidential campaign and everything will be much more polarized. So I expected that, and that's my personal expectation as an Argentine citizen living abroad. We have one here, and one there. Yeah.
I just wanted to backtrack to this lady's question about Nisman's notes. I wasn't quite clear on the inference you made from, you have read his notes, correct? And
I read the indictment.
The indictment, okay. Well, if the notes were clear or unclear, do you infer that there was something that he was going to say on trial that was earth-shattering, but there was nothing in the notes that had the legal force behind it? Or I'm just not clear on the state of his notes or his investigation.
The notes are not public.
Okay.
What is public is the indictment. What he was referring to are the notes that they found in his apartment where he was preparing to testify in a congressional hearing the next day.
Right.
So,
Just personal
but from
notes,
from those notes, if you go to my office and look at my desk, you will certainly say that this guy is crazy. It don't make any sense. It's not only that what I'm saying is crazy, but when you see it there, you have the evidence. So.
Yeah, just two little things. I agree with you that I would prefer better communication from the president, from Argentinian too. However, I think other members of the executive branch had expressed the need for the justice system to go on and clarify the facts. So, Capitanit, Alberto Fernández, I think there were some gestures that were not that far from that. It's true that all the accusations of the march was not productive to move in that sense. Like the thing of only blaming the people for going into the street is not helping to reconcile and distress the situation. However, I believe that the opposition is also playing their own cards. Like you can see how the opposition, since the Nisman fight, also have agreed in going in more broader coalitions to be more strong in front of the government. And of course, you have all the primaries going on in the Peronist party. So the question is can we analyze this besides the political spectrum, the political situation in Argentina? I believe completely not. This is in the middle of a political battle about who is going to govern next. And my second point about the memorandum of understanding, what I understand what's going on is that maybe the Iranians were not there and they were not culpable, so they couldn't find anybody to bring to Argentina to persecute because maybe they were not the ones provoking the AMIA attack. So is this memorandum still useful? Probably there might be, I think, some cooperation in nuclear things and so on, and it contributes to the statement of the government that they are not pro-US. So it helps
probably the only thing that the whole agreement wanted to accomplish, just the separation, and then it brings back to me what she says about legitimize. If you legitimize, like you said, and we bring somebody, let's say, an expert from the United States, and they determine that Nisman was, killed in a way that the government doesn't say, this is the toleration again. And I think that's the only thing that agreement. Sorry, I had to interrupt because that agreement is a really source of problem, I think. An agreement with Iran for a commission of truth and
there is nothing happened in the Commission of Truth. There is a memorandum and nothing was going on. The Argentine justice was not able to proceed on that.
Neither did the Iranian government. It was sat there.
So that's part of the problem of the legal case.
Yeah, okay, but it's not to blame the government. I mean, in terms of the government has to be blamed because the agreement failed?
No.
Okay, this is what I'm saying. For that reason, we have to say that that agreement is not useful. I don't know, there are so many international agreements with so many countries that are useless. And I mean, at least that's useless and not harmful. I would say that's okay. I mean, so I'm more skeptical of bringing some external powers again inside the country to solve an internal problem that it will not solve and mess up things again.
Although I think it's a question of disagreement as to whether it's harmful to have something that's on paper but in effect useless. So.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if the judicial process in Argentina was not able to bring any Iranian to Argentina to apply justice to them, might be something that there are no evidence to bring any Iranian, and we might think that the cause of the AMIA was, I don't know, Horacio Barbisky was saying that it was the Syria and so on. I don't know.
But that's going back to what I was saying before, is that I agree that it's very problematic to have someone from outside come solve our own problems. But if we can't trust our own judicial system, because, I mean, we have a vice president that's being prosecuted and it's still the vice president.
Probably when they end the mandate, there will be something, but yeah.
So how do we, how do we reconcile those things?
Or let's shift it the other way. How about an understanding agreement between the U.S. and Argentina and a commission of truth? How would that Berbisky would think about that?
I don't know.
And that's the thing, is that because it's so polarized that you can't even talk about something like that. Like if you break it
No,
down,
I believe in international justice, and if I'm the government of the U.S. and I know the person who caused the AMIA thing is in Guantanamo because I have it, I would rather give it to Argentina and have to deal with it, with the justice. So I believe in international justice. I don't know if an international commission going to Argentina is just more makeup rather than solving the conflict.
So I fully agree with you. I think that the Argentine problem should be solved by the Argentine society. The only thing that I said was that at some point an international presence, not to solve the problem, not to act as a judge, and not to act as a truth commission or anything. One who looks at the investigation and says, this investigation is being carried out properly. That could provide a lot of legitimacy to the result of the investigation. That is not something that will be transferred to an international judge or prosecutor. I don't believe that we in Argentina need that because there are enough guarantees and possibilities to do it. But that is a good evidence of the different views on this issue that are present in Argentina.
Yeah, one thought about it and a question that I have for you. Like, I've been reading the story. I came here because I was fascinated by the story. I read it with my little daughter. She's 9 and she's like crazy with detective stories. And the way you live, I'm from Spain. And the way you live in Spain, this also stirred a lot of, it brought a lot of fascination. People kept reading a lot about all about the story. And people are not worried so much about the truth, but as to the story having a good ending, because it falls so much into like a narrative pattern that people are already thinking like, who's going to play this man in the movie? That is really, and with many Argentinian stories, it happens that way. That they really fall really nicely into like narrative patterns. So that people are not worried about the truth anymore because everybody takes it that the truth can't be known. But that's how is it going to become a good story and have an ending? And as I was reading it, something that, and hearing what you had to say about you being a lawyer and having read the indictment, why would somebody who might not be a genius, but still he probably is a very smart man and spent many years, like 10 years on this prosecution, why would he rush it all and do a faux pas like this and go, to like prepare an indictment, cutting his vacations and everything without enough evidence? I mean, how is there?
The explanation is that he felt that he was going to be removed from his post as a prosecutor in the AMIA case. And that's why he rushed to file the indictment before being removed. That's the explanation that people are giving, and that in part is read because of the firing of Schusterman from CIDE in December, and he supposedly Schusterman was the main person providing all the information to and supporting Nisman, and because of that, he felt that he was left alone and he needed to file as soon as possible before being removed from. That's the explanation that appears in the paper. But now nobody will know. Yes.
Well, I'm trying to speak from the scholar perspective or the academia perspective, but it's really, really hard. I mean, I'm one of the polarized people in Argentina who cannot have an unbiased view on all this. And I guess first I just disappointed again with Argentina and not only the government and all the institutions, and I wrote my thesis about Cristina Kirchner's discourse, and I kind of believe on what she was doing, and I analyzed it from a political perspective, and it was good, and I'm one of them. I want a different type of government. I don't want the white, upper class government anymore. I want a populist idea that includes everybody else. And Ernesto Laclau was pretty clear about that. The populism is better for democracy because it brings interests to the table that they were not there before. For the people, for example, the Plan Trabajar and all of those social programs are brought into the table because now the people who are benefited by, they have something to claim, so they can participate more in democracy. So that was his idea, and I kind of agree with it. But besides that, I'm just a little disappointed because I see it again, and I guess what I want to ask is, how do we go about it? Do we? I mean, I believe in in this government and the changes it was made. Not so much on the discourse, because the discourse is a very much caudillo, non-institutional type of discourse. But I did believe in the change. But now I have to believe that, and this is kind of the question, that Nisman was not a suicide. Someone killed him, or someone made him commit suicide. And that happened before. It happened with Ferreira during a protest in 2010. Someone came out of the organization, the Unión Ferroviaria, and shut him down, just in the middle of the street. And why? Why that keeps happening? Why do we have to keep hearing these stories? Cabezas, back in 2000, another one. He was bringing something up, and they shut him down. I mean, how do we go about? Because on the Nisman case, we, like he was saying, we're just gonna, keep talking about it, and I read an article of Lucila Lara. She's the director of the School of Law at UBA. Well, she was saying that these denuncias that people bring up to the judicial system is just it's a political strategy, and I agree. I mean, it's like because it brings a media attention to it. So, but all of that we can talk about, But how do we go about the rest? I mean, do we believe that he was killed, or do we? I mean, for me, it's really hard to believe that he committed suicide, and if he was killed by someone, we're back in in the old Argentina that we all know, and I thought I had, like I said, this might not be a question, but just a big frustration I have, and it just happens again, and I want to believe that we're going the right path, but the mafia we have behind, the political mafia we have, it's just, maybe it wasn't Cristina, but I'm sure someone and this is just another theory, someone in government did not like him. It could be the intelligence service, but maybe he knew something. I don't know. This is just a assumption, but maybe in the government was somebody that say enough is enough and fixed it the Argentinian way.
It didn't have to be a political murder. If you're going along that path, it could have been a passionate murder, a lover, or somebody who didn't like him, a neighbor, I don't know, right?
Strange, it happened that day.
I guess we kind of all agree that he was killed, right? I mean, okay, that's a good starting point.
And we
okay.
So let me react. I don't know. But I fully understand and the frustration. And every single Argentine, I don't know, somebody published the next day, Argentina doesn't stop of surprising me every day and every morning. And that's how we felt, and with this feeling of despair. No, one more again and again and again. So that's something that it's, and I'm here, so I have no idea how to solve. But one thing that you said that I think that shows the limitations of our democratic system in Argentina. You said, well, the judges and these indictments or things that are being brought to the justice are all political settings. At the same time, the government makes one of its biggest showings of positive results all the prosecutions and convictions of all the military officers for the human rights abuses from the dictatorship. You cannot have the same judges being corrupt when they investigate the government and being heroes when they convict the military officers. They are exactly the same prosecutors, they are exactly the same judges, and you have to accept the results, like it or not. Either or everything that the justice system and the judicial system does is political, or nothing is political. But you cannot say that only when the government is accused is a political maneuver by one sector or another. So for me, that is part of the lack of leadership that we see both from the government and the opposition. That is how they position and they see the role of the judiciary. Rather than protecting the independence and impartiality of the judicial system, they criticize only the things that they don't like and delegitimize when they don't like what the judiciary system acts, and that's something contrary to their own interests.
My question is, why we expect to have some justice when there's lack of justice in Argentina in general? I mean, that's a cause that AMIA causes like for 20 years, and before that was the Israeli embassy 2 years before this. No one will talk about it. My frustration was, I try to be detached from things that happen. I'm living here, but sometimes you don't get into that specific situations in Buenos Aires or in Argentina, what's happening. But this case, in my opinion, it brought me the attention of like, fuck, I mean, this is incredible. I mean, and my point is why we may expect to have some justice now when justice is not well deserved in Argentina. I mean, we know that it's true. I mean, I'm an Argentine, I'm proud to be an Argentine, but it's not true. We're not a country that makes things like it should be. So why do we think that now will be different? Or do you think that now will be different?
There's just one thing. Like, I don't believe that our country is so exceptional in this situation. Like, CIA committed crimes against humanity. Obama still there. Bush is still there. No one even say, let's bring Bush in front of justice.
Yes.
Okay, who killed Kennedy? We still believe the theory that CIA is saving us?
We can do a. There's no country. There's no perfect country, but seeing what's happening in Argentina,
I believe
it really hurts.
I
it really hurts because
us.
no one talks about the AMIA now. Everybody talks about Nisman.
Right.
And in 2 weeks, we talk about something else. Every disaster covers the other disaster. And what's happening is that I was in the AMIA the night before. It blew, right? Nobody talks about the death. Nobody talks about it. Now everybody's about Nisman, and now it's political. And then, in 2 weeks, things will be they will be forgotten.
I think that
and that's the frustration, is why we expect justice in a country that usually justice is not seen as impartial.
You have to have some hope. Like, I believe you.
Yeah,
I'm in the same boat. But if I don't believe that there has to be something out there, then what am I telling my kids? You know.
But
I don't believe it. I disagree with your pessimistic view. Sorry, I don't think that. I agree that this is not so exceptional, Argentina. I believe that there is justice in Argentina. And sometimes
that's beside it. We agree that there are problems everywhere, but we're not talking about the problems everywhere else. We're talking about the problems. This problem.
I'm just
so
saying
we have a
exceptional,
question. We have a question or comment there.
No, I just want to say that what I believe is exceptional from Argentina is that how the transitions within the Peronism are so dramatic. And like, this is why I think we should analyze it in the political spectrum. And normally all these things are carried on when there is a lack of leadership and it's not clear within the Peronism who's going to be the leader next. So I think like a fundamental change is in the structure of the Peronism system. I don't believe that the Peronism will stop being like, hopefully, like, I don't know, Macri can do whatever they want. I'm more close to the Peronism here, but I think that there is a clear need of restructuring of the party system and how it works within the Peronism to avoid this kind of disaster. I think there are a lot of internal things going on there, and in the history of Argentina.
Yeah, but how?
I wanted to say that last November one prosecutor was found dead at his home in Spain. Was one prosecutor that was responsible for corruption cases against the government. And I'm sure that it's first time that most of you listen about that, right? I'm sure also your daughter would love it.
I've read it.
So I mean, why nobody's talking about this case in Spain and we are all talking about Argentina? I have one question.
So you are serious about Argentina?
What if Nisman's case, what happened in other Latin American countries as Colombia or Mexico that are pro-US? Would be all talking about Colombia and Mexico, where lots of people die every day and nobody cares. So what I mean as this case of Nisman, some people here is asking for an international intervention. I think we have an I'm not looking. I think right now we have an international intervention, not supervising the process, just trying to change Argentinian government, because Argentinian government is not pro-US, is not pro-Europe, is not as it should be. So I mean, really, no matter what happened with Nisman, nobody cares, or most of people who is talking about Nisman out of Argentina cares. It's just an election. It's like an election game that they want to change the government in the next 6 months.
I completely disagree too.
Yeah.
It's a story that, if you see that, I mean, a guy says, hey, you're going to be indicted, and then he found dead. It's a story. We were talking with Hassan about that. That is a thriller. The only problem is that we don't know the end. I know that Darín will play Nisman for sure. But the point is that it takes the attention. I mean, usually as an Argentine, you're talking about, hey, the focus Argentinian, Messi, whatever. Now somebody's telling me, hey, what about Nisman? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, because it's impressive.
Wait, but nobody's asking about you about the Spanish prosecutor that was responsible of cases against the Spanish government.
Nobody cares about that story.
Nobody cares about that story because it's Spain, it's not Argentina.
No, because it's a small region with a small case. It's not a process against a woman, as you were saying, who is a president and who also has a lot of influence in the area. The Bolivarian, people.
That's what matters. That's the point.
Let's like to have a conversation.
One conversation?
One conversation. When there are many Argentinians, many Jews, and there are too many conversations going on. So it's impossible. How long do we need?
1:30.
1:30. So let me tell you one difference. There was a prosecutor accusing the president, a sitting president of the government, and to investigating an international terrorist attack. That was not any type of case, a normal case. It was accusing another country or being involved, like the Iranian government. There are allegations that the US and Israel were behind. And all that makes a big international news. It was not just a simple corruption case in any country. So that's why there is so much attention. There was so much attention when Baltasar Garzón was removed in Spain. So that was, the magnitude is more or less the same. The only thing that they didn't kill Garzón. Probably the Spaniards were more civilized, or he didn't commit suicide. I don't know, but what I'm trying to say is
we have more years of dictatorship.
Yeah, but what Nisman was doing, investigating or covering up or whatever each of us will define it, is what makes this so important, because there are so many interests and actors playing around his death. And that's why is news, and there will be a lot of news, and people will try to say something and gain some points for his or her side. And it's not only in Argentina. We have Correa in Ecuador supporting Cristina, and then you have some senators here saying the government should do something. So you have a lot of actors playing around this, and they will keep playing for the next several years.
Well,
that's for sure.
Comparative perspective, people who disappear before they're supposed to testify, probably not too many of you remember this, but in the late 70s we had the Iran-Contra scandal in the United States, and William Casey, the former CIA director, was scheduled to testify before a congressional committee and was suddenly diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they removed half his brain. And the joke was the lobotomy was successful. For some reason, this was regarded as hilarious, rather than touching off all this painful neuralgic thing. So the reactions can vary a lot.
Yeah.
I would like to add that 3 judges turned down the case after Nisman dead. So it worked. It worked. Whoever killed him and put pressure, not only obviously in Nisman, but in the entire judicial system. Whoever is on the case now, in my opinion, because 3 of them turned it down, he's probably being very cautious about how he's going to move. And this whole cause is probably going to go away and die.
Give a chance to Daniel Rafecas. I believe it. Daniel Rafecas, I think.
Yeah. I don't personally, I never read about anything about him, and I'm glad, well, that's a, sense of hope that hopefully he'll do things well, but it is still implicit. You have to be cautious. You know what happened. You know what can happen to you when you're going to move around this case. So.
Yeah, but nobody's going to kill him now.
So
no comment.
Let me say, we will go there. And I worked in the judiciary in Argentina 20 years ago, and I worked in the same tribunal with Nisman at that time. And if there is anything in the culture of the judiciary system, is a distributive principle. What it means that everybody has too much work, and you try to distribute your work. So you walk around and try to disperse your files and not to have your files on your desk. The attitude of the judges, we don't want more cases, we want less cases. And if they are hot potatoes, for sure we don't want those cases. And so I wouldn't read too much on these 3 judges rejecting the cases, because nobody wants to investigate this case. It's a complete mess. There will be a lot of pressure. Probably never we will know the truth. So why do you want that? Unless you like the cameras. But you don't want the cameras to say nothing else to report, because so.
But if you have to follow this case, you as a judge won't be back in your mind, maybe, no?
Well, it will be, yeah. I have to be cautious. But I will be cautious because we are accusing the president. So it's a minimum thing that you do as a rational person. It's the president. Come on. That's basic. 1 + 1. I tell my students, I teach how to do human rights advocacy. The first thing that you look is against whom you are fighting. So if it's very powerful, you are careful and you go as strong as you can. If it's a weaker thing, you do a different strategy. But you need to know who is on the other side. But these judges, and the judges are not stupid, they know. If I will have to deal with the president, you have to be careful. But not because Nisman is dead. You do it because he's the president. Yes.
I had a comment kind of going along with what he was saying about, I don't know if this is unnoticed, but one of the big effects of this is that the AMIA case now kind of fades into the background once more. And so all the attention is on who killed him, but no one's really talking about, I guess,
you know, what's going to happen with the AMIA investigation, and like you said, you know, people have rejected the case, and like no one wants to take it, and even when you ignore that, there's the fact that no one is really paying attention to like the AMIA bombing anymore. And I mean, I don't know if this is also kind of a side effect of anti-Semitism in Argentina, that it's like just not really that important because it was a Jewish spot, but now the big thing is like who killed him and not necessarily like what, you know, was the case and like what's going to happen with it. And so I guess even while the government does have to deal with all this, like they end up benefiting from because they have like one less thing to deal with. And so like we as like an Argentinian people, and I have the double thing because I'm both Jewish and Argentinian, like we're never going to find out like what happened with this. And this is kind of like one of the effects of this whole mess that no one's really talking about is because now we're like we're not even close there. In fact, I think that we are like a step back from this, and so we're like farther and farther away from finding out whatever happened with this.
I think that we agree. That's why the title of this talk is Another Cloud on the AMIA bombing, because that's how we feel, and really, at least for me, personally, my concern is what happened with AMIA, who was behind. Now we have two. One former president and one sitting president being accused of covering up the AMIA bombing. But we are not prosecuting. There is nobody being prosecuted for the bombing itself. Everything is about the cover-up. Maybe the dean supposedly provided the traffic, and according to all the evidence, there was no traffic, no ban in the AMIA. And the evidence that was provided it doesn't match a traffic. It's at least 2 or 3 different cars or trucks. So yes, for me that's the tragic story. I have, and probably some of you also have friends or families who died in AMIA, and we would like to have justice for them and know that there's no another case of impunity. And I think that distinguishes in part from the embassy bombing, because there at least there are some indications that Israel didn't want to facilitate the investigation, and they didn't want to cooperate at all with the Argentine Supreme Court that supposedly they already made justice in their own way for those responsible for the bombing. That is for another movie.
But I think that I disagree that this benefits the government.
I don't think that.
I don't think that this, I really think that it's catastrophic for all the people in Argentina, Jewish and non-Jewish, like everybody want to know what happened in the AMIA. But saying that this particular part helps the government not to deal with the AMIA, I think it's incorrect. I think it's not in the benefit of the government not to have the true or even fake truth. Like you can blame the government for providing you with a fake truth, but this situation is not helping the government at all.
It's helping that they don't have to deal with it, which is what they've been going for. Like they've been for 21 years almost now. They just keep pushing this and pushing it, and they don't want to deal with it.
The Kirchner government nominate Nisman, a new prosecutor, to deal with the case, try to move forward. I don't think really that this is, on the contrary, we will see it in the elections. I don't think this is benefiting the official branch of the government.
I think the murder isn't benefiting them, but the fact that they don't have to deal with the AMIA case because no one's paying attention to it is benefiting them.
I don't think so.
I don't think people put attention to that before. Like, no one, I mean, the feeling I get, and I might be wrong, I'm possibly wrong, but the feeling I get is that people don't care about AMIA. They care about was Nisman was killed by the president or not. And that's the entire case goes around that. And that's the feeling I get. And it's sad because that's my frustration. We don't know, I mean, we're back to square one. I mean, we don't have a resolution for the bombing. And we may never have it now because you see what could happen to you if you get involved in this. You know? And I don't know.
I was surprised at some point you said that everybody here in this room took it for granted that it was a murder, and I was wondering if we would have been having this conversation if we didn't take it for granted already without knowing that that is a murder. No? If it had been a suicide, and it would have been proven, would we be talking and discussing this the same way or not? Like, I think everybody takes it for granted.
The timing was a little too convenient for it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be talking because there would have been no suicide. The guy was about to, he had the cab set up to pick him up on, I don't know what time to go to the Congress. I mean, there wouldn't be a suicide that day. Maybe after that, maybe, I don't know.
But it's not you're supposing that
right, but I am supposing that for what I know and for what you know too. You know,
yeah.
You make up, like we were talking about before, you make up your own opinion on how, with the little, you know, unfactual things we have going around, that for me, being that he was going to present in front of Congress and assuming there was a suicide, it doesn't, yeah.
And who just decides to commit suicide? It's not just a spur of the moment thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes
That's
it is.
well, sometimes it is, but
I have to say,
you have to
I
be
know
able to
it's
see the
a perverse sort of fantasy, but a couple of things that have come to my mind are like, maybe he realized his case was so bad, that he was just like, oh.
I heard that before.
But also there's this interesting case in Guatemala where supposedly a person who really had it in for the president had hired assassins to kill him, and he said, if you find me dead, it's the president's fault. And you know, I've seen that name, Rodrigo Rosenberg. I've seen his name brought up in several articles talking about Nisman. I know it's like, you know, a flight of fantasy here to even sort of suppose, but it is something that's gone through my mind. I don't know. I mean, even though, yeah, it seems like probably it was murder, but there's no evidence.
And given the background of Argentina, you know, when you have a problem, you kind of fix things that way. You know, if you put it into the context.
Yeah, but there's plenty of people who.
But that just conspiracy.
So I can believe that I not.
We need to finish. Sylvie, any last words? No?
Well, you've done a great job illustrating the point that it's a very neuralgic point.
So thank you very much, everybody. I want to thank LLILAS and the Schusterman Center for organizing this.
Mentors of this.
Yeah, I'm practicing my distributive skills that I learned working for the judiciary in Argentina. I like it. This event shows that there is a lot of interest and need to talk both about Argentina and about the Jewish life in Argentina. And it would be great if we can create some sort of space to have this conversation.
Group therapy.
Exactly.
Yeah, group therapy.
And half of the Jewish in Argentina are psychologists, so they, group therapy is exactly psychoanalysis. Enjoy my sister. So if we can think about some way of that to give continuity to this, that would be great. Naomi, thank you very much. You play a role both the Schusterman Center and the Argentine fan of LLILAS. So thank you very much.
Thank you.